Well, in the last year, and this is a relatively new thing, the American left has united behind a new theory of citizenship in the United States. Anybody from around the world can come here for any reason. And once they're here, they never have to leave, no matter what the original justification for being here is. And if you disagree, you're a bigot. The U.S. has a designation called temporary protected status for immigrants from certain countries. We have this because we're a kind country. We try to help. The status is supposed to be a short-term measure, letting people remain in the U.S. if their country suffers a calamity, like a natural disaster, earthquake, flood, whatever. This program has been around for a long time, and it has been badly abused. El Salvador, for example, received TPS in 2001 after a series of earthquakes. It still has it today. 1/3 of all Salvadorans on the globe now live in the United States. Honduran immigrants have enjoyed temporary status since 1998. Haitians have had it since 2010. The Trump administration has said, geez, this is supposed to be temporary. Let's make it temporary and let the status of some countries expire. Well, in response, the left is revealing what they really think about temporary. They were actually permanent all along. With the support of the ACLU, several immigrants are suing the Trump administration, saying they can't be deported. They claim that the president has described some countries as terrible places to live, therefore he's a bigot. Never mind, the entire justification for letting immigrants come here in the first place is that their countries were terrible places to live. The only thing that matters is this single principle to the left. Anybody can live in the U.S., and they should never be forced to leave, ever. We think that's the principle, but to explain it to us, Ahilan Arul Anandan is legal director of the ACLU of Southern California, and he joins us tonight. Ahilan, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
So there's an obvious internal contradiction here, which I'm sure you've pondered before, which is these plaintiffs whom you're representing are saying that it was bigoted of the president to describe certain countries as hellholes, crappy places to live, and yet the justification for their being here anyway and not returning is that those countries are exactly what President Trump said they were. So how does that work?
Yeah, I don't think that's quite how we see it, Tucker. You know, I think the government can create a temporary program for people to say 6, 12, even 18 months. But these are countries where people have been lawfully residing here under this U.S. program for almost 20 years, in some cases more than 20 years. And all we're saying is that when the government then wants to change the program and take away their status, tear apart their families, their U.S. citizen children who've been here or in high school, it has to have a very good reason to do that. You know, and they don't have, obviously, a very good reason here.
But may I just say that, but hold on, isn't the reason itself inherent in the program? It was a temporary, this wasn't permanent resettlement of people who wanted a better standard of living. Well, we've done it for a lot of people, but this specific program was to say, your country's a disaster, you can come here till it's better. 1/3 of all Salvadorans on planet Earth now live in the United States. So there's been a massive resettlement here. Why is it unfair to hold them to the standards we agreed on in the first place?
Well, two things, Tucker. You know, first, it's not a question of whether or not you can have a good reason to terminate it. It's the question is, did the government actually have such a reason here? Right, so we know that there was a bipartisan proposal, Republicans and Democrats, that proposed to the president granting permanent residence to these people because they've lived here so long. And he rejected that in this meeting where he made this comment that, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, that
well, don't, I mean, everyone knows what, but hold on, that's not relevant, actually, because none of that became law. So he had a conversation with someone. It didn't go through the Congress. No executive orders were issued. So it's not really material to the statutes on the book now, which describe a temporary program, and you're saying that it can't be temporary because why?
No, it definitely can be temporary, Tucker. Our point is this: once it's happened for a long time, right? So, and some of our plaintiffs are not just immigrants, right? There's like the 14-year-old high school student born and raised in Northern California who's studying government, who's studying the Constitution, you know, who knows that the Due Process Clause protects persons and not just citizens. She now has to either leave the only country that she's ever known to go live with her parents in El Salvador, or her family has to be broken apart. There's 100,000 other children in the same position. I mean,
look, you're not going to surprise me with stories about people suffering, because a lot of people are suffering, including millions of American citizens. And I feel sorry for all of them, immigrant and American alike. That's not really the question. The question is what's the best for the country. But the question also unresolved, which you have not yet answered, is, are they saying either that it was racist to describe their home countries as terrible places, or are they saying that their home countries are terrible places and that's why they can't go back? You can't really say both, can you?
No, I think you know, the position in the lawsuit, and certainly if you look at the designations that supports this, is that the justifications for granting temporary protected status to people from El Salvador and Haiti and Sudan and Nicaragua remain in place today. The countries continue to be racked by violence.
But about Trump's, so Trump's comments, the ones that were reported, and we don't really know exactly what he said, but I'm willing to believe he said that because it's true. By the way, a lot of these countries are hellholes. Are you taking issue with that? Are you saying that it's wrong to call Haiti a hellhole, but no one here from Haiti can be returned to Haiti because it's a hellhole? I mean, will you just engage with that core thing?
Right. Yeah. No, Tucker. You know, that the president is reported to have said is that we don't want people from these asshole countries,
right?
And so it was an expression of animus against them. And it's not the only statement. I mean, the president has made many statements about, you know, everybody from Haiti has AIDS. You know, I don't want to go through them all, but a number of really derogatory statements against people from these countries.
Who cares? Why is that relevant? Look, we just engage with this fact: 1/3 of all Salvadorans in the world live in the United States. So it's not like we have special animus towards Salvadorans. 1/3 of their entire population lives here. It's kind of hard to argue that we're racist against Salvadorans, isn't it?
No, it's not about in fact, America is not, as a whole, racist against it. And we have a long history of people from China after Tiananmen Square, from Hungary back in the 50s and 60s after the problems there, people obviously from Central America as well, that we have allowed welcome to this country because of the problems that are existing in those countries.
But
and the
20
problem here
years is not
people
temporary.
Want to do... Exactly, Tucker. And if the government had ended this program, as they did, for example, with the Ebola temporary
so if we hadn't been
statuses
so nice, we wouldn't be punished for it. Wait, you just perfectly crystallized the whole problem with our country and Western civilization itself. If we hadn't been so nice, we wouldn't be under attack now. We're being sued because we made the mistake of being kind to immigrants. That's what you're arguing.
Well, no, I think we've sued because when the government wants to tear a set of families apart, and we're talking about American children, school-age children, it has to have very good reasons for doing that. But we don't think the government has shown...
Okay. If they're not asshole countries, then it's not so terrible to go home. Right, I get it. I'm sure they're nice. I think these are fair questions. We're out of time, Mr. Hernandez, but thank you for coming on and explaining that. I appreciate it. So
thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you. My guess would be, I don't know what's going to happen, of course, but my guess would be that most immigrants, legal or otherwise, come to this country to work, not to become political activists. So most of them probably just going to work, right? I mean, how many people are actually going to take part in this, would you say?
Well, here in San Francisco, we're very political. You're from San Francisco, so you know exactly how we operate here and how we organize, and we stand up and we rise up. And we're not going to stand for having, you know, the Trump administration just say, okay, we're going to build a wall, we're going to deport 11 million people who, just like you just said, are hardworking people. If you look at the number of immigrants that work in the fields here in the state of California, you're talking about hundreds and thousands of them. Who is going to pick the crops here in the state of California if you suddenly all decide to, like they want to, deport all the immigrants that work in the fields here in California? And so we are, on Monday, May 1st, here in San Francisco, are going to stand up and we're going to protest. And it's not only about the deportations, but also this wall that he wants to build between Mexico and the United States. You don't build a wall between your neighbors. You know, all these walls around the world have been torn down.
Wait, hold on. Wait a second. Look, there's a huge distinction, of course, between immigrants and illegal immigrants. But in the case of illegal immigrants, and those are the ones you say are being targeted by the Trump administration, don't you think it's a little much to sneak into someone else's country illegally and then protest their government? What country would put up with that? What sane country would allow that to happen?
But let's go back to history. The Native Americans this is their land. You and I and everybody else is an immigrant. This is Native American land. Did
That's
they
where
ever
you're
ask
wrong,
you
Roberto.
for a green card?
I was born about a mile
They
from
didn't.
where you're standing right now.
It's like
wait, hold on.
This government has created this control system about who they let in and who they don't allow to come in. This is a free country.
Name a government. Wait, stop. Wait. No, okay, I got it.
People have always been allowed to come here.
You're throwing so much stuff out here, Roberto, that just give me a chance to respond. Name a government on planet Earth that doesn't control or attempt to control who comes into its country. Has there ever been a government like that anywhere?
Yeah, you go to Tijuana, San Diego, and you can cross the border from the United States into Mexico without no problem. You go from, and I've done it, I've gone from Mexico to Guatemala, I wasn't even asked for a passport, just walk right in. There are many countries that do that.
There
So
are
what are you talking
countries
about?
that allow sorry, I'm not trying to be mean. There are countries that allow anybody who wants to come in and live and work there. Let me clarify that. There is no such country. There has never been such a country. What you're describing is a place with no government. Because the purpose of a government is to define and defend the borders. And so that's never happened.
All right, so
American Indians or not.
So let's talk about this government that you're talking about. You know, 11 years ago, we had the exact same protests that we're doing on May 1st in 2006. You remember that? May 1st, 2006? And
Vaguely.
Millions of people across the country protested, and our government failed to do comprehensive reform. Obama promised us his first year in office, his second year in office. He got elected again. He promised it. All the finger pointing went back between Congress
People who were
and the
here
Senate
illegally?
and the president. Yeah, and
But
so
hold on,
you know,
hold on, wait, can I
you
speak?
got to hold
I'm sorry,
accountable
they're not citizens.
the
Hold on.
Congress and Senate and the president for not doing their job.
How can, let
and
me
it's
just ask you,
unfair
wait,
that
stop,
all
wait,
of a
just
sudden
stop.
you
Wait,
get
I'm
Trump
sorry,
in office,
this is
and
a
he's
tidal
going to
wave
say,
of
okay,
silliness
well,
here,
I'm
and I just
getting
wanna
rid
hold
of
on.
all
I'm trying to
11
hold
million
back the
people.
waters here,
You're
Roberto.
breaking up families.
Okay, I got it. But
You're
hold on,
breaking up families.
Okay. Well, so
hard-working people.
let me ask you one question, and that is, why would a non-citizen who is not allowed to be here, who does not have the right to vote, have a say in how the U.S. government operates?
Very simple. It's you have a farm worker who's the hardest working individual on this planet. Don't you believe he has the right to have a say?
No. And by the way, I admire how hard people.
Well, then you and I disagree because
I'm not against
I've seen farm workers and I've seen the hard work that they do in this country.
Okay. I think the California schools have declined in quality since I left.